Students, tonight I'm super excited because we have not one, but two new PMP certified project managers now. So I'm super excited. Both Mark and Ivonne passed their PMP. Yay! So I'm gonna start with you, Mark. You were here first. So tell us, a little bit about the test, how you prepared for it, going into it, how long it took you. We know you took it in the facility itself, but give us a little bit of feedback, a little bit of background.
So yeah, it took it at the facility. I used the full time. And I prepping for it, I took the simulators and just really used, I was pretty consistent on my simulators of areas I was struggling. So I went back and reviewed that. I didn't do a data dump per se, but I definitely wrote out just like the border of the PM1 view. So I just could in my head have that of the whole dropping into it, breaking down the question. And that was just for me useful in how following the process of breaking down the question. This is where they're going to do next. Is it waterfall? Is it hybrid? Is it agile? My test just seemed like it was a lot of hybrid. And so, yeah, but just using the simulator to see what I needed to do and going back to those specific sections of the course, or using the free flashcards or the digital book to kind of just go back and hit those specific areas. But yeah, it worked, and I'm glad it's done.
I bet you are. So, it sounds to me like the decoding we do of the questions and our coaching calls, that it really did help support you, because that's exactly what you're talking through, is just understanding where you're at in the project, what kind of project it was, and being able to kind of break it down to that 50-50.
Yep. And yeah, especially just going through the questions and recognizing and striking out portions of the question that just didn't seem right. And also trusting myself when it was what is if it's asking a budget question, and just because the answer says something about budget or cost, they make up terms, and it's I've never heard of this term, and just trusting myself that no, I haven't memorized everything, but they're making up budgetization of the optimal cost, but it's no, this is total, this is crap. So, and just being able to cross out those parts, and going back to this is the best option there. So I will say, with the coaching calls and the hard questions, I did not like those. I love the coaching calls and connecting with you. But as far as the questions, I felt I would walk out of those feeling very dejected because I would get them wrong. And especially with Scott, I would argue with him, but it definitely helped to learn the PMI mentality of how they write their questions. And so, just with my academic background, I struggled with the phrasing and the wording of the questions, especially of a standardized test, but it definitely helped kind of get me in the mindset to be able to flow through this. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And I love how you said that the tests really helped you, as well as simulators, and the fact that you took the advice, you went back in, you did your audit, you found those weak areas, and you jumped right back into that content and the book and the flashcards. Yeah.
It was great. And then just making sure to ask questions when we all came together. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let me give Ivonne a moment to step in here. So Ivonne, tell us a little bit about your exam and how it went, and your preparation leading up in your journey.
Sure. Well, we're in Calgary. I'm in the same class that Kyle and I were in together, and it was every Monday night for 2 hours and Saturday. So instead of doing the coaching videos, it was a scheduled class, same content. And then I reviewed it again separately outside of that, and went through my data dump, and anything that I didn't really grasp a hold of, I did go back to Scott's videos. I found the 7 flows a fantastic video. I really liked that one. The EVM dump was amazing. So I think that was by far my favorite, because it brought everything together. And when I was going through all of it, it was oh, that was the conclusion in the story, right?
Yeah, they put it all together.
Yeah, so that put it all together. I had about 5, 6 questions on the formulas, just the meaning of the formulas. So they would say, this is a positive number, this is a negative number. What does that tell you? And so I had to write out the whole thing to tell me what the formulas were and the order of everything. So I kind of lost time in that, but that's okay. By the end, I was honestly like out of time. The last 20 minutes, I was having an internal panic attack of how am I going to finish? And then I remember the last class, Kelly, you taught us, this is how you quickly go through it. And the last 30 questions, it was, I didn't even read the question. It was like, answer the question, look at it. And it was like, well, it's got to be this. And I had a couple spelling errors in there. So I was like down to the 50-50. And then I'm looking at the spelling error one. I'm like, well, it can't be that. So I chose the other one. And
I love it. Yeah. So I'm super glad that, Mark mentioned that to me. I was like, oh, let me tell you my tip that I used when I took it all them years ago. So tell us, so did you go on site like Mark did, or did you do it virtually?
I did go on site. They made us schedule 270 minutes, which is 4.5 hours. And I thought, how am I writing for 4.5? And then I had to do the math again in my head. And I was like, oh no, they want you there early. Then they read the instructions, they pat you down, make sure everything's like roll up your sleeves and all of that. So that was shocking to me because I haven't done that before. But yeah. And then you went in there, they gave me like headphones so I could block out all the noise. It was great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what's one tip that you both can give to students that are thinking about going for their PMP in this course?
Something that I found really helpful was these coaching calls, because I would, well, like last time, Kelly, I would argue and say, I don't understand this or help explain this. And that solidified that I knew the content and the questions were the same format. Although I thought the coaching calls were a little bit harder, but it does follow the same format and you get a feel for it. And once you get the feel for it, you're like, okay, this is okay.
Did you like Mark felt like your test was more one way than the other as far as waterfall, hybrid, or agile?
I thought they were equivalent that way. I felt it was more servant leadership and more like raw PMI. And it was a lot of collaboration and what would you do and talk to everybody collaboratively. Like there was a theme to the content. Yeah.
No, I multiple times like heard Kelly's voice, like just being like, and what is PMI value? It's servant leadership. And I was like, ding, ding. Like, so, no, to echo Ivonne, like the calls, are very valuable, but it's getting through the coursework to get to the testing, to keep that momentum going through, but to lean into the calls, because I agree, like I felt the questions we've done in the coach calls and the hard questions were much harder than the test. I think the hardest part of the test, for me at least, and I did not feel confident until like the last week, was just the length of it. Like by the end of it, I was like stick fork in me, I was done.
Yeah. I understand that. Did you have several math on yours as well, Mark? Or?
Yeah, it's similar to Ivonne. Like I wrote out the EVM made easy, and just being able to follow it. There was only one question I had to do any math, and that was still like it was still kind of it was the cost variance was the only one I had to do, and that was, it's still, I think I could have gotten through it without it. I think I could have gotten to the answer without, but that was the closest. Most of it was just kind of that interpretation, but the EVM made easy, I felt still helped kind of organize the flow in my thoughts.
Nice. Well, I'm gonna let the students ask you some questions. Does anybody have any questions for Mark and Ivonne that just passed their PMP?
Yeah, I have one for either, and maybe you guys can just agree on it, however you want to do it. But I'm still making sense, and you can jump in, Kelly, maybe after we get done with tonight's class. But making use of the simulator, Mark, I heard you kind of mention that. I'm still trying to figure out like my flow for like auditing myself. Like I feel like I do well in the coaching calls, and I've done well in some of like the baseline tests. But then I go and I do like integration management or something, and I get like a 50, and I'm like, come on, like what? I don't know what's going on there. So like when you guys saw that, like, what was your process for addressing that? And Mark, you kind of already hit on it, but I'm interested in how you approach that as well, Ivonne. And congrats to you both.
Thanks, Walter. For me, I know the first couple times I did the simulator, I was not at all happy with my marks. So then I went back to my data dump and I went back to the content, tried to solidify it, but I didn't feel confident in knowing, like, you know, the terms, you know, well, but you weren't confident in the answers. And so then I did the flashcards, which helped me quite a bit. The flashcards reinforced it because you would answer it in your head and then you'd look at the answer and be like, okay, I was right or I was wrong. And that for me helped tremendously. And then I did the simulator again, but consistently at the third hour, you run out of steam, you're tired. And so a lot of those skills that Kelly was teaching us about, like don't really monitor how much time you're spending, but look on the average. Okay, I've got 30 minutes left. I need to finish 30 more questions. And if you're on question 40, it's like, okay, we got to speed this up a bit. Or, okay, I spent 10 minutes doing this mathematical formula. Let's just speed it up, or I'm going to pass on that flag and then keep moving on. But for me, it was mostly the time and the third hour.
In one of the videos when Scott's kind of introducing the answering process, he talked about the importance of like utilizing it and practicing it so that you get it down. So when you get into the test, but one thing that I appreciated about the test is that you can annotate things. And similar to what, you know, Dawn said last week of don't go crazy annotating the test, but I found it really helpful on the questions to strike out parts of the answer I didn't like. And so but that process again of like, nope. And especially as you get into a flow, I mean, there were some questions, there was a series of questions where it was taking me like 20 seconds because you would just, similar to what Ivonne said, you know, you read that last part of it and you look through and you're like, this is clearly an initiating question and that answer is closing. So nope. And that process of elimination, I think, is how I got to more of my answers. But kind of going back to your part about like not feeling great about certain areas, the flashcards are super helpful. I actually got the audible version of Scott reading the flashcards. And I would listen. I have a train ride into downtown Denver each day and on the way back. And so I would listen to the flashcards and then read them. And I appreciated the flashcards, especially for Agile, because that was the one area that I kept like not hitting the points where I wanted to. And I feel like the flashcards go into a different kind of depth than he does in the course. And so that's once I started doing that, my scores went up with it. So.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Congrats to both of you guys. I just started, so I'm on day 2, and I tend to go back to the video a bit to make sure that I understand the content. Is that something that you guys recommend, or you would just listen to it till you get to the end and start on the question, things like that? Because I've been on day 2 for a while because I just pause it and go back again to try to understand all the things and trying to make sure I get all the content. Am I on the right track?
I for sure think you are. Like if you're in the moment and you're like, wait a second, I'm not quite sure about that, let's review it. Absolutely review it, because if you get to the end, then you'll forget about all those parts that you wanted to review and you didn't. So go with what works for you. The goal at the end of the day is for you to understand the material.
No, I had to do that to some extent, because Scott talks fast and says a lot of words. Yeah. And so there are times I was just like, wait, what, huh? So definitely, but I think it's the balance of, I did not and don't have a traditional project management background. I work at a university. And so academia is just stupid, and doesn't follow best practices. And so a lot of this was just exceptionally new to me. And so I got very intimidated by the amount of content and didn't understand how I wouldn't have to take extensive notes. So for day 1 and 2, Agile's day 3, I took a lot of notes, and then I stopped and just like watched through things. Scott in the video so often is like, we're going to get to this. We're going to get to this. And there, I think it's that trust in the process that they will get to things, but then there are other additional resources throughout the site that can help reinforce things. And so I wouldn't let yourself become stagnant in mastering a day before you move on, because they do reiterate and reinforce things, especially with waterfall. It really goes into that. So let yourself get through the course. And then I felt like I really didn't start to master things until I started doing the tests. And then I felt like things really started to come together between the tests and the coaching calls and the hard questions.
Good, thank you.
Anyone else?
I have one more. Sorry. So is everybody that I've seen who has passed the PMP thus far has been taking their test at the testing center? You guys have a significant reason behind why you went to a testing center versus being at home? Because I'm terrible in testing centers. I was that C student because somebody was tapping their pencil.
For me, yeah, I was when we did I'm stuttering. What's going on? When we were going through it, I remember going through the class and my computer froze for 10 minutes and then I couldn't even get back into it. And I thought, if my internet goes down, if the cable gets cut, if something happens and they can't see me, I'm disqualified. And then I'd have to go through that whole process again. So for me, like going to a testing center, it was better because I knew I didn't have to rely on that internet connection, or I didn't have to rely on something happening. They gave me ear canceling earphones and it was fantastic because I couldn't hear the person next to me or the person behind me coming and going. I was honestly focused on what was happening in front of me.
My partner also got her PMP, and she took the test 2 times before she finally got Scott's course and then breezed through it. And she tried it twice remotely, and in both instances had proctors that were just borderline evil. Between some of the technical glitches that Ivonne mentioned, but then also like proctors all of a sudden like popping in being like, where are your eyes moving? Why are you looking at? And so like you literally have your camera on and there's somebody watching you while you take it. And so that's where she had just such a bad experience with that. And then she had the technical glitches that she was waiting for them to kick it on. And so she was sitting there waiting for like an hour for the tests, and it was just a negative experience and I didn't want to do it. So I did it at the site.
Thanks again.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, if nobody has any more questions, I'll let Ivonne and Mark go. And congratulations again. Really proud of you guys. I'm excited for you.
Thanks so much,
Thank
Kelly,
you.
for all of your help. And the process really does work. It really does. And it gets you into the flow. And then I know for me, like when I got stuck at a question, you'd flag it, you carry on, and then you kind of get into the flow. And then you can go back and you're like, oh, I wasn't in that flow. And you can answer it a little bit, not easier, but you had a better idea, right? So it worked well. Stick to it, stick to the program. It works.
That's right. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Everyone. Good luck, everyone.